Today we're continuing the GRDC in Conversation series, and I'm coming to you from just west of Geelong with Ashley Amourgis, General Manager of Southern Farming Systems. Ashley grew up on a dairy farm near Deloraine in Tasmania, and what I love about her story is how she's carried that practical grounding into a career that now sits right at the intersection of research, extension and leadership in the high rainfall zone. And while Ashley now leads Southern Farming Systems, one of the most rewarding parts of her work has been facilitating grower discussion groups, a model strongly linked with GRDC's hyper-yielding crops approach of growers learning from growers and testing ideas in real paddocks, not just trial plots. In this conversation, we unpack her pathway into grains, the moment that built her confidence, what Southern Farming Systems is learning in the southwest of Victoria, across seasons, and why, even with the technology coming, the people side of agriculture still matters more. We're continuing the flow of GRDC in Conversations, and it's very nice to be closer to home, near an organisation I guess I've driven past probably hundreds of times, with Southern Farming Systems here just west of Geelong, and sitting down with General Manager Ashley Amourgis. So Ashley, thank you so much for having us, and I'm really interested to hear more of your story and share it today.
That's great. Thanks, Oli, for coming in. Thanks for taking the time to come out. And I was a little bit surprised when you got in touch, to be honest, to have the conversation. But yeah, it'll be a good chat, hopefully.
It's where I landed with someone else that we've had on the GRDC in Conversations. And you know, like, people can say no and some people do. But so I'm going to start this conversation off. I'm interested from your perspective, maybe some of the hesitations, but why did you say yes? And I guess, maybe what are some of those challenges or some of the things that you're thinking about when it comes to being on the podcast?
I guess I said yes, to be honest, for a little bit of my own personal growth as well. It's not something that I've done before. I haven't been on a podcast. I'm not the best at putting myself out there, probably. I sort of do tend to sit in the background a little bit. So it was probably just an opportunity for me to, put myself outside my comfort zone a little bit and do something a little bit different. And I guess even from an organisational sort of perspective as well, I think that we do really great work here at SFS. So to sort of have our name out there and associated with that, I think is really important too.
It is. And so I think we'll have to do a little check-in at the end, and we'll just go, was it as good as maybe you expected, worse, et cetera? Do I need to change some things? So we'll just get some direct feedback if that
sounds good.
But actually, tell me a little bit. Obviously, Western Victoria, Southwest Victoria hasn't always been home. You grew up on a dairy farm down in Tassie. Talk to me about your childhood down there, and maybe in those earlier formative years, what was your perspective of agriculture before you started to build a career in it?
So, I grew up on a dairy farm in northern Tasmania, so just out of a little town called Deloraine. So growing up, I guess we spent a lot of time out on the farm doing general farm chores like milking cows. It was a family farm, so our siblings were sort of quite involved as well, and mum and dad. So we spent a fair bit of time out and about on the farm, doing things like I said, milking cows. We used to do a bit of fencing. We used to feed calves and do all the sort of general jobs that you do as a kid growing up. And I think you learn a lot of values when you are a farm sort of kid. I guess that there's those sort of, hardworking and that sort of thing. You see what your parents do day to day. There's the commitment to agriculture and to farming, and it's not just a job, it's not just a career, but it is sort of a way of life as well. And I think it's a really nice childhood when I sort of look back on it, and growing up in that environment. We had a lot of good friends and family around us as well. So we sort of got to experience that together as well. And I think that was, it was a really nice way to grow up.
It's a pretty special way. At what stage did it change for you? And did you start to go, actually, there's jobs beyond farming or maybe in farming? And what did you start to explore?
So even when I left school and then went to uni, I was a little bit unclear exactly what I wanted to do. I studied a Bachelor of Science and I majored in agricultural science. So even that, I was still a little bit unsure where I wanted to go. I was thinking that agriculture was sort of a path that I was interested in and I had the background in. So I sort of thought that was probably what I would do. But in terms of after I finished university, I still kept it fairly broad. I applied for jobs all over the country. So I sort of wasn't really set necessarily on something in Tasmania or Southwest Victoria or anywhere. So I was, fairly open to applying for different jobs all over the place. I suppose with the background coming off a dairy farm, I had a little bit more interest in the livestock side of things and a little bit more in the consulting pastures side of it. So I probably focused a bit more on those areas. I know I initially applied for an MLA internship, which is sort of, a bit of a pathway to how I got here. But I was not successful in getting that. But through that sort of process, the CEO at the time at SFS, John Midwood, saw my application and he approached me because I had a little one-liner in there that said I was interested in broadacre cropping as well. So he approached me and sort of said that there was a role that had just come up. So he asked if I wanted to do an interview or if I would be interested in it. And I sat down with him and the other manager here and I managed to get the job. And then from there, it's been about almost 9 years with SFS and mostly in the grains industry.
A decade with, or nearly a decade with any employer is huge. I'm keen to understand a little bit more of the culture and what's kept you here. But that openness that you had and looking kind of across Australia for different jobs, was it a sense of adventure? Was it?
I think so. I had always, so in Tassie growing up, I had actually been to boarding school. So I guess used to being away from home. So I think moving over to Melbourne and then exploring those different options, I think it probably was a bit of a sense of adventure, a bit of just sort of, looking at different areas across the country. We are such a diverse sort of country and there's so many different options in sort of the landscape. And I thought it would be interesting to sort of go anywhere and start a career anywhere in Australia.
Looking back at that, so that early rejection, I'd say it's the red meat industry's loss, and obviously the grain sector's huge gain with the tenure that you've built up here. But if you reflect back on that now, like what were some of the learnings, and when you're talking to your staff or if you had the chance to talk to uni students, et cetera, about that importance of kind of some of those early setbacks but not letting it define you? How important has it been?
I think it's been, very important. I think, like you said, it's you can have those early sort of setbacks, but if you keep yourself quite open to different opportunities, then, your path will sort of find you. And I think that, everything sort of does happen for a reason. And so we've made it here where we are now. And I think it's been a really good pathway. So I think, keep your mind sort of open, have a look at the different opportunities around you. And if you don't get the job that you initially want, then just keep applying and keep moving through to different opportunities.
Find the next one.
Yeah.
Take me back to day one. So obviously at the beginning it was maybe like a pastoral livestock role that you were hopefully trying to get. You land the job through John here at Southern Farming Systems. What was day one like?
Day one was a little bit scary, I will admit. I didn't really have any background in the grains industry. So even the difference between what wheat and barley looks like to me was very, very new. So it was very new. I had really good mentors when I first started out and really good team around me as well. So there were a few other staff that started at a similar time to me, and I think we probably lent on each other quite a bit. But there was really good support, but it probably was a little bit intimidating and daunting, as it is starting a new job, I suppose.
Absolutely. It's one thing to be, I'll say, a farm kid and involved in agriculture, but it is just so broad. Is there something, if you think back, that was like the steepest learning curve, or just something from those early days that kind of stands out as being not, I don't want to say triggering, but when you go, there was a question I asked or a moment where I was just like, I
don't know if there was one in particular, to be honest, but I think in general, not having a background in it, I suppose everything is very fresh and very new. I mean, even getting out on farm and talking to farmers and things like that when you don't have an understanding about the industry and necessarily what they do, it's probably a little bit daunting, which we've come a long way in that now. But I think doing presentations and things like that, because a lot of what we do, especially in the early days at SFS, is extension as well. So we are doing presentations and things like that too. So I think it's a little bit daunting when you stand up in front of people and are, presenting on research or trials and things that you run. I think one of the most important things, or something that sort of stuck with me a little bit from some advice that I got in the early days, was that you won't know everything and you don't need to know everything. And I think that sort of stuck with me because it does give me more confidence now in having conversations with people, because you can throw it to the room and you can ask other people. You're not sort of expected to know everything and expected to understand everything, which I think when I initially started with SFS is probably what I had in my mind. You're fresh out of uni and, I think you have that expectation within yourself, or I certainly did, that you sort of should know more than maybe you're expected to.
It's funny, isn't it? It's like that, the want to kind of prove yourself, but it's like those early years also, it's totally your license to just make those mistakes, ask the silly question. And not that it ever stops, but it's in those early years, it's literally, you've got the ticket.
I know, and I think you do. And it took me a little bit to probably realise that, to be honest. But I completely agree. When you first start out, it's really an opportunity for you to just learn from all the people around you. And so there's no silly questions that you can sort of ask. And so it is the perfect opportunity to form all of that sort of knowledge and go from there.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I'd say also when you're working the space where you're advising back into farmers, it can be easy to be like, oh, gosh, I'm standing up in the room and I should know, but you potentially have, if you've got, say, 30 farmers who've been doing it for 20 odd years, it's going to test my maths, you've got like 600 years of experience in the room, effectively. Why did that advice stick with you so much? And why does it still stick with you here 9 years later?
I think it was probably just the confidence that it gave me to, look around those in the room. Like, we're surrounded by, especially at SFS, by so many different people in the industry. So we've got farmers that are around us, where there's advisors, we work with universities, we work with government. We have so many different people that have such a breadth and a wealth of knowledge that I think knowing that I didn't need to know everything and having the confidence to then throw it back and ask other people, whether that was, in a formal sense where we're presenting in front of people, or whether it was just, after a phone call, just picking up the phone and calling someone else so that you can then feed that information back. But I think that, it was probably one thing that really built my confidence in being able to develop, I suppose, because it probably helped me to realise that there are so many other people around me that are also learning, but that also have a really deep sort of knowledge on different areas, and just probably me utilising them was really important.
I'm interested. How have you balanced, I guess, as you've become a lot more like knowledgeable from where you started to obviously where you are today, general manager of Southern Farming Systems, doesn't happen kind of by chance. But how do you balance it today, knowing, okay, I'm in the room here as a listener, actually I'm here just as a part-time contributor, or really this is my opportunity to lead the conversation? How do you do that?
I think it is a bit of a balance, and it probably just comes back to, I guess, topics and areas where I feel more comfortable in. And it probably depends, I suppose, internally, that is a part of my role, and a part of my role is mentoring the, younger staff. We've got graduates, we've got RNEs, we've got senior staff as well. But a part of, the general management role is to sort of mentor and assist all of those people. So internally, probably step up a little bit more. And then externally, I would say I'm still a fairly introverted person. So in larger groups, I probably am still, the quieter person that sits off to the side, but maybe goes and has those conversations with growers and things if they're asking questions afterwards. But also quite a bit of facilitation that I've sort of done as well, particularly with some grower groups. And so in those situations, I suppose just, it's knowing when you need to step in if, the conversation sort of feels like it's going off track, or there's a bit of a lull, stepping in with those sort of conversations and just steering it in the right direction. But it is a bit of a balance.
And it is such a skill, isn't it? Like the facilitation would help with that, wouldn't it? And that the sheer breadth of the different growers that you get in front of, it's like, okay, today I'm going to try this a little bit just to see how it goes. Is that what it's like? Yeah,
no, it definitely is. I get a lot out of just listening to what growers have to say as well. And I have a huge amount of respect for them, for advisors, and for everyone in the industry. But it is, you can just step back some days and just listen to what they have to say. And I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, for sure. Was there a role or a moment in your career where that confidence did start to shift? I know you'd obviously got that advice early on, but then when you started to really feel and, I guess within you, be able to shift that confidence?
To be honest, it was probably a few years into my career, and we had a bit of a shift at work here. So we had a couple of probably more senior staff, like my two managers, so our CEO and then my manager as well, that left. So from there, it probably stepped me up into a higher management position. And that's probably where I felt like the confidence sort of grew because there was a bit of nervousness, I suppose, with when you have a bit of a shift of people at work and you're, the next probably most experienced person that needs to step up. And I think when they left, I probably realised I knew more than maybe what I thought I knew. And so I guess that confidence kind of just grew and probably built a bit from there. So I pushed into it a little bit, even though they probably thought I was more than capable. Maybe, within myself, I probably didn't feel it until I was actually just kind of thrown into the role a bit, I guess.
Being able to nearly have that like window, the mirror held up for you a little bit when you're onboarding someone or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You just go, oh, actually, I'm impressed myself a little bit there.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
And so 9 years at one organisation is a lot though. So what's kept you here and what is it about Southern Farming Systems and the work you guys do?
I think we have a really good culture. So we have a really good group of staff now. We have sort of throughout the time that I've been here. I think everyone works, really well together, and I think that makes a big difference. The people around you and the people that you work with is really important in holding a group together. I think the sort of breadth of work that we do and the variety of work that we do is something that I love about SFS. So, one day we're out in the paddock doing field work, we operate machinery, we do harvest, we do sowing and things like that. And then we're also doing research. So we're back in the office and we're analysing scientifically results and data and all of that. And then we're also out on farm doing extension sort of events too. So speaking to growers at different times of the year, speaking to advisors, we go to different events and things. So professional development and personal development is also very important, and we get to do quite a lot of that. So it's probably the variety of work that we get to do that I really enjoy. I really enjoy, being in the office on really hot or really wet days and then being able to sort of manage my time so that you can be out in the paddock and out in the field on those nice days as well.
And so can you help me understand, like for you guys, in a way, I'll say farmers have downtime in and around other things, but like here we are, so we're sitting down at the end of January, we've come off harvest. Is this a busy time for you because you're trying to aggregate all that information to help the planting, which is only a few months away?
Yeah, it is. And it feels like it probably doesn't ever stop, but it is. Like, this is a really busy time. So we hopefully will finish harvest tomorrow. So we've still got a couple of trials to come off. But harvest is basically finished now for us. So as you said, sort of end of January. And the staff are very much into report writing now. So it takes a lot of time to pull all that information together, analyse it, we run stats on it, statistics on it, and then we start to write up reports. They get fed back to clients or they get written up and go into our results book. And then we've got our results day as well that comes up in March. So it doesn't, once harvest finishes for us, it doesn't quite stop. It just keeps rolling around a little bit.
And so talk to me, look, I actually haven't asked anyone, I don't think yet, on the GRDC podcast about this, but like what roles artificial intelligence having on supporting the research work? Like, is it helping to alleviate some of the burden that you guys have?
It probably is a little bit. We probably don't utilise it to its fullest extent, to be honest. And they're probably, as we grow and as we sort of learn a little bit more about it, we might utilise it a bit more. I think people definitely use it a little bit with some of their report writing and things like that, and even applications. So, doing funding bids and funding applications and things like that, it is really good at pulling together or, putting in the application and then pulling together bids. So we probably use it a little bit for that. We haven't really used it for the statistics sort of side of things or the analysis a lot, but that, probably will come in time.
Watch this space.
I think it's really important that you obviously still have to have that really good understanding of what it's, sort of spitting out to you at the other end as well, though, because it's not perfect just yet. So I think, if we were to utilise it, I still think you would have to have a pretty good understanding of what you're reading and what you're analysing, but it probably is maybe just a little bit more efficient.
It's that skill, isn't it, around that critical analysis. It's like the knowledge is getting easier to grab, but it's the how do you decipher that and how do you turn that into actionable outcomes, whoever the stakeholder is.
Yeah.
So talk to me about some of the projects that you've worked on here, Ash, and maybe over that 9-year period. Like, what are some of the ones that have stood out or ones that you think have really shaped you and the work that you've been involved in?
A lot of work that I've been involved with is around nitrogen management. So that's probably been one sort of focus area that I've done quite a few different trials and different work on, which I don't know that there is ever an easy answer for nitrogen management. It is very complex. You can get different seasonal outcomes. You can get different sort of things happening every year. And so I think there are a lot of complexities to it, which probably is why it's constantly still a priority for our members and still a research priority for a lot of areas. But I don't know, I find it quite fascinating and quite interesting. So it's something that I quite enjoy, looking into and doing a bit more about.
And so for people who are listening from the GRDC base who maybe aren't familiar with the areas which you guys operate your trials in, talk to us a little bit about the work you guys are doing, but what is happening in and around that nitrogen space, specifically in this southwest region?
Yeah, so we operate, southwest Victoria. So basically from Inverleigh across to Hamilton. So it's quite a big sort of area, I guess, across there. And for us, waterlogging is probably one of the biggest sort of factors that can influence seasons here. So more often than not, we have too much water rather than a water limited. So I think understanding your nitrogen use during all different years is quite important. Understanding the timing of it. We are obviously high rainfall zone as well. So I think nitrogen for us is a much larger input than it is in other areas. So understanding, the timing that it needs to go on and how that sort of interacts with our environment is quite important.
And then like the other work that you guys have been involved in it's mixing the two worlds that you could have been involved in with MLA and obviously GRDC. Talk to us about some of those projects.
Yeah, so one that we're involved with now and something that, I really quite enjoy working on is the Farming Systems project. So it's a GRDC Farming System South. So there's farming systems projects that have been running across Australia. So more northern regions, WA, all the different regions have their farming systems trials, which in some areas have been running for 10 plus years, which is pretty cool to see some of the data that comes out of it. So we have more recently in the south got involved with that sort of work as well. So it is going into, this year, 2026, will be the 4th year of the trial. So it is looking at all different systems. So crop rotations, there's timer sowing in there, there's a bit of nitrogen management. We also have pastures in it as well, because across our area for most farmers, they are mixed farming. So I think incorporating that is really important too. And we do a lot of annual sort of trials and annual work, but obviously on farm, it's not just a set and sort of reset every year. So the system approach is really important. And so understanding that, I think for me, is really exciting. So being able to see year on year what's happening on these trial plots, I think will be really exciting moving forward.
And so across these different trials that you've been working on projects, can you just touch on, obviously the last 2 years have been a lot drier than normal. And it's interesting, isn't it, here where what you were saying before kind of reminded me of what Andrew Fowler said in Esperance, where there were people doing tile drainage to get water off paddocks and just how variable it can be from, say, Inverleigh across to Hamilton here. But like the last 2 years being drier, what have you guys noticed and what are you learning, I guess, both through the extreme wet but also the extreme dry?
During the dry conditions for us, sowing has been like the time of sowing, and moisture at sowing has probably been quite a topical sort of one. And understanding, when the right time to go is for our region, is there enough stored moisture that you can get away with going, or do you wait and hold on and then sort of wait for those more rainfall events to come through? So I guess establishment and sowing has been in the drier years, probably something more topical, and then understanding how to manage your crops through that time as well. So again, probably back to nitrogen management, but even I think that's probably been something that people have been a little bit challenged with, and particularly with input prices, being where they are, they're quite high across the farm. So understanding how they can sort of manage that using forecasts and things like that, I think is very important, although it can be challenging as well. But sort of utilising that and knowing what's happening throughout the season and where those sort of different management options can sort of help as you go.
Yeah, so over the last 9-10 years, in this area specifically, what do you think has had the biggest influence or biggest change, maybe, whether it's been, let's talk from a practice perspective, but what's had the biggest influence, or a couple of the things that have had the biggest influence down here?
I think drainage is always one, although it's probably more than 10 years. It's probably been over the last, probably since SFS was sort of founded, which it was founded off the back of really was those raised beds and drainage. So being able to crop across an area that typically wasn't designed for cropping, I suppose. So drainage is still a really important one. And as I said, with waterlogging and the area that we work in, it being quite a high sort of priority. So drainage is probably one, which has allowed people to crop a lot more than what they were. And so I think that's something that, will always be topical in our sort of area and has probably changed the landscape of what we're able to do across southwest Victoria.
Because it definitely, well, and probably longer than 10 years, 15 or 20, really has changed from being livestock dominant to it's amazing now you look at some of the paddocks and the spread in the areas that people are cropping down here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think it has shifted a huge amount and people sort of still fluctuate back and forth a little bit. But the amount of cropping properties that are across the area now has definitely increased.
A question I had for you, and this is probably turning the page a little bit, but obviously you spent so much time with farmers over the years. You've done the research, but what do you think, reflecting back now, like what have farmers taught you that no textbook would have been able to teach you, or in this day and age, let's go back to AI, that ChatGPT could teach you?
That's a good question. I think it's probably understanding that every farm is very different. So what works for one farm doesn't necessarily work for another farm. So you can learn the fundamentals of agronomy and the fundamentals of sort of a farm and a farming system. But I think it's understanding when you go out and talk to people that, people operate in different ways. Some are family businesses, some are more corporate organizations, they have different levels of income stream or different sort of things going on. They might manage them slightly differently. So I think understanding that, what works for one farmer doesn't necessarily work for another farmer in the same way is probably something which I have, learnt and taken a lot away from just from talking to people and having those conversations.
So then something that I think of is going, obviously you guys are in the critical work of extension. How do you then overcome some of those hurdles so you're not just constantly creating, I guess, custom responses, custom outcomes for individual farmers so you can start to get, that flow of info at scale?
Yeah, I think we try to put as much information out there as we can. And then we sort of allow our members and the farmers to sort of utilise that information in the way that best suits them. But it is a challenge because, like I said, not everyone will operate in the same sort of way. But I think if you can give them as much information as possible and sort of provide them with the context around it and the context around the trials, then, they can sort of utilise that information as they need to or as they want to. And then, see how it fits into their system, I suppose.
Ultimately get them the info and then it's up to them with how they decide to use it or not. I'd love to ask you about, just the opportunity that comes with being a manager of staff and just now being at the seat where you really are influencing people early on in their career, similar to, I guess, the mentors and the support and the advice you got, which has continued. How do you approach managing people, and what have been some of the things that you've learned that maybe others would really enjoy hearing from?
It's funny when people talk about, I don't know, management and even me being in a management position, because in some ways it doesn't actually feel like I'm in management necessarily. Like we're a very close-knit sort of team in the way that we operate and the way that we work. So I feel like everyone gets to contribute in a very similar way. And so I suppose my management is probably fairly sort of reserved. We spend a lot of time having conversations with different people and it's probably just mentoring kind of through that way. So trying to teach them the basics of what we do at SFS and then they probably sort of grow from there as they start to progress.
Do you think the time that you guys spend in the car traveling to different trial sites is something which really does break down that barrier of being able to have discussions, understand more about the people you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do a lot of travel in the work that we do. So I think it is probably those general off the cuff kind of conversations and things like that that you have as you're driving along or as you're walking around trial sites and just sort of teaching them in that way. We have regular meetings, operational meetings. There's a lot of logistics and a lot of planning that goes into what we do, particularly around sowing and harvest time. So there's a lot of meetings that we have where we sit down and we sort of work out who's going where, what's going to happen this week. So I think those probably times as well is where you have a bit more of that structured sort of management. But otherwise, yeah, there's probably a lot of times where it kind of flows back and forth a little bit in the more conversational sort of style.
I love it. If you're going back to talk to yourself when you were applying for those those roles straight out of uni, knowing what you know now, what advice would you say to 20-something-year-old Ashley who's coming out of university about the opportunities that there are out there?
I think keep it broad. And if you're open to it, then yeah, have a look at all the different opportunities. I mean, to be honest, when I left uni, I probably never expected to be in the grains industry. And I've now been here for, 9 years or close to 9 years. And I really enjoy it. I absolutely love it. It's a really good industry to be a part of. So I think, take the opportunities that come your way and be open to sort of looking at other options and even different areas and things too. Like I guess I grew up in Tasmania. It's still probably similar landscape in terms of the rainfall, still high rainfall down there. But I think just being open to exploring different areas of the country as well, because you can learn a lot from just going to different sort of agricultural regions.
If you look into the future, so let's say 10 years from now, what do you think is exciting you most to stay in ag? Or in 10 years' time, what do you think it would be if you'd say that the thing that excites you most about the future of the industry? What would it be?
It's funny when people ask that question because I never quite have an answer for where I want to be in 10 years or where the industry is sort of going to be. I think it will continue as it has been, but there will probably be more technology, talking about AI and things like that. I think there'll be more of an expansion into that. I think the people will still be here. And I think that's a big part of agriculture is certainly the people. So I think that probably won't shift, but I think there'll be probably changes to some of the efficiencies of what we do, whether that comes from technology, whether that comes from breeding with new varieties and things like that. So whether there's any changes, I guess, when you look to other countries across the world, like Europe and the UK and things like that, there's certainly different regulations that are occurring over there, whether any of that sort of makes its way this way, which can often be the case as well. So I suppose how people are farming and how they're operating might shift slightly in terms of regulations and things like that as well.
So with advice and I'm going to focus with young people, let's just say next generation Aggies, whether that's farmers, agros, advisors, whatever it might be, what skills or advice would you give them to be able to be at the front of your area that you choose within any part of agriculture, but specifically in grains? What advice would you give them around the skills that they should develop or focus on?
I think having the on-the-ground skills as well as the sort of office or scientific side of things is really important, because I think understanding the different aspects of the industry can really help you to sort of grow and to sort of continue to expand your career. So understanding at the end of the day, for us at SFS, we are a farming systems group. So what we do is to support and to better growers. So I think understanding on ground what growers and farmers need then sort of filters up from there. And so it ensures that, everything that you do, that we do is relevant to farmers and to agriculture in general. So having a good understanding of what happens on the ground and then right through to that scientific information and base is really important, because I guess that is also really important because from the top down, that's where we get a lot of our technology advances and things like that too. But I think, having a broad sort of understanding of probably the whole spectrum would be my advice.
Well, I reckon that's pretty good advice. It's a very good way to wrap the conversation. So, Ashley, thank you so much for sitting down and having a chat. And I think we probably just need to check in at the start. A touch over half an hour ago, you were saying that you hadn't done a podcast before, but how are you feeling about it now?
Not too bad. I think you're a good podcast host, so it probably made it quite relaxed.
Well, no, thank you so much. I think, it's fascinating as part of this In Conversation to support the work that GRDC are doing. And obviously there's so many technically skilled people, but being able to understand a little bit more of the stories and the backgrounds and the passions of what people have is just so interesting. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for another episode of GRDC In Conversation. I hope you're enjoying coming around Australia just as much as I am, meeting the people who are shaping Australia's grain sector and ensuring that we're able to keep thriving for future generations. If you know someone who you'd love to see us get on the podcast, reach out to the GRDC via their social channels or via your local rep. The next In Conversation episode is back in a fortnight's time, so mark your diaries. We can't wait to see you then.